episode 18 of Strange Brow Radio. I'm your host, Tobe Johnson. Today's guests are Chad and Alta Dillard. The story, Orbduction in the French Quarter. If you haven't heard this story, you've not heard anything like it. It's an amazing retelling of a couple and their co-worker who go a-missing for some time. And the story they have about where they went is something to behold. In fact, it's going to be a two-parter. So the first part coming up here shortly. But thank you to our sponsor, feralbyaaron@etsy.com. Go check out shaman-inspired museum quality drums, rattles, smudge sticks. These hides on these drums are just amazing pieces of art all to themselves, let alone when you make them into a drum. Something sings. That's what they tell me. Things will come a-knockin' at night if you play these in the woods. Go to the Etsy shop, Feral by Aaron at ERYN. Next up, Chad and Alta Dillard and their amazing story in the French Quarter. We'll be right back. Chad and Alta Dillard and lived a quiet life before 1995, a somewhat normal life, one would say, but things got strange when they saw that first, what I would call mothership, hover above them in 1995. And from there, the adventure really begins. There's a lot to the story. Many, many details will be explained in a short amount of time. That's why we're doing it in a two-parter. So, the first hour will be Chad's story. The second hour will be Alta's story. And she will include the off-the-record co-worker, Christine. Maybe someday she'll come forward and talk about her own experience with them. Without further ado, I give to you the Orbduction in the French Quarter. We're here today with Chad and Alta Dillard. They have been responsible for the book and the Facebook page, Orbduction in the French Quarter. Say hello to Chad and Alta. How are you guys doing?
Doing great. Thank you for having us here, Tobe.
We're so excited. Thanks so much.
Yeah, it's fantastic that you both do this together. You know, oftentimes when a witness comes forward or an experiencer, unfortunately, it's a really one-sided issue, especially in a relationship. And one person either pursues it real hard while the other person tries to pull them back, kind of like, you know, in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, when Richard Dreyfuss' character really started going head over heels. So it's encouraging to hear you both on the same page. Now, the book that you both written, I imagine that you both had a hand in writing it together. Is that true?
Yeah, for the most part, Alta wrote a lot more than I did. Yeah, we wrote it together.
We had to collaborate as far as we've had in that one particular event that we probably will be speaking about soon. There were three of us involved, and all three of us had very different experiences. So had to collaborate, to get all of that different version, if you will. I did most of it as far as, because I was just compelled to do it, and it's just not something that I've ever done before. And, boy, I mean, it's crazy. It's just been crazy because there's been so much, and the book was then edited down to what I call a very small book, where it's just primarily about the one event. But ours are lifetime events. There's a lot been going on and still going on.
Right. These things seem to have that way of building on one another, kind of like little building blocks. And so I understand what you mean with that. But let's move back in time. Let's move back to 1995 here. Does that sound like a good place to start with your story?
Anywhere you like is awesome for us. You guide and we'll follow. And we love questions, so.
Yeah. Well, in 1995, it seems as though things started with a UFO sighting. So let's start there, and then we'll work our way back and forwards as we tell the story.
Okay, well, I guess I'll go in and start this off then. this was in '95. This was in Hammond, Louisiana, which is kind of on it's what they call the kind of the North Shore, across Lake Pontchartrain from New Orleans, and so we're going in to town for dinner one evening. It wasn't quite dark yet, it was still kind of a little light out. And as we come into town, we kind of go over or around this group of trees in this turn in the road. In fact, behind this group of trees is like the local Walmart shopping center. And we get around this group of trees, and they were kind of tall pines, and we kind of look up into the sky, and there's this craft in the sky, and it's just enormous. It's huge. It takes up half the sky. It seems to be low to the ground, below cloud level, um, and it was very dark, and the shape of it was kind of like a triangle with the tip cut off, or like a long rectangle with the kind of one end not as wide as the other end, moving very slow. Alta and I both kind of look up at it. She turns to look at me, and I look at her. So we're kind of in our mindset, we're saying, okay, are you seeing what I'm seeing? And now she never turns back and looks again. I look back up at it. Now there's other people out on the road, and I don't see anybody like, pulling over to the side. There's no reaction. There's, nothing like that. And of course, this was in '95 before, like cell phones and with our, cameras and everything. So, we didn't have a camera there. We look up at it. I look back up at it, and then I kind of just turned away, and I was like, okay, if I don't look at it, if I don't acknowledge it, they won't know I saw them. That's kind of what happened in my mind. Again, Alton never looked back at it. She just, we went on to dinner that night. We didn't speak about it. We didn't talk about it. We got home. We didn't speak about it. We didn't talk about it. It was like, okay, if we don't talk about it, it didn't happen. Well, that wasn't able to happen because the next morning we saw on the news or radio, or I don't remember how, but other people had reported strange things in the sky that same night. Um, I'll have Alta talk about it a little bit because the way she, reacted, it was like, okay, that didn't happen. That's not real. And if that would have been probably one of our only experience, we probably would have never spoke about it. We probably would have never talked about it. But then a few months later, we moved to the French Quarter, and things got really weird then.
If I could interject real fast, though, just for the sake of the conversation, there's no doubt to me, this is my language, not Chad's, that we were arranged, my word, arranged in 1990 by an unseen force. Others have put a lot of language to it. I don't use the same language. I just keep referring to high strangeness. But in that arrangement, we discovered within 24 hours that Chad's grandfather and I share the same first and last name. His grandfather's first name is Alta. Now I just put that out there, as I like to try to encourage people who hear us, that are kind enough to hear us. I like to say, what are the odds? What are the odds? And so that seemed to begin our connection without any doubt, high strangeness right from the jump. So when this happened in '95, I had already been so freaked out in the very beginning of just meeting Chad that seeing something in the sky that looked like it took up the sky was not something I could process. And I didn't. I absolutely went into shock. I turned my head away. The weirdest of behavior Boy, I wouldn't do it now. But that's certainly what happened to us when it first happened.
So you remember looking at this giant craft, and your initial instinct for both of you really was to turn away and pretend it wasn't there. And looking at that there, was there, you speak about the synchronicity that's already in place with Chad's grandfather being named after you, Alta. Was there, looking back, was there any familiarity with this craft, as though it awoken something in you that was already within you, maybe forgotten, or was it just so shockingly new that that was your first instinct?
Awesome question, and I have to say I honestly don't know how to answer, even this far into it. It's just, again, because our time seems short, again, just for reference, I was told by my mother that we had had an encounter, if you will. That's the only way I know how to describe it. She said when I'm about 6 months old, she's driving across the desert, and she claims I'm the only passenger in the car. This would have been the late 50s, and she claims that a small craft, UFO, metallic, came down out of the sky and stopped her on the highway or on the road. Now, that was not something I ever wanted to hear in my life. I had no interest. This is, I'm consistent with that. Whatever has been going on with me particularly has, I feel like, been so big maybe, or so strange with no answers, that when this happened to us in 95, all I can respond to is I just feel like I just completely shut down. I turned my head away. I jerked my head away. And I looked directly at Chad, begging Chad silently to tell me that whatever that was not there. I can say it a bit comical now, but in the experience.
Yeah, and me too. I was like, okay, this can't be real.
No.
At the time,
it was too big.
Yeah, it was just, it's impossible. But
Describe.
And I don't remember it moving.
Describe too big to put it in perspective of something on scale. So let's say where the New Orleans Saints play, Saint Stadium, or whatever they call the stadium there. Is it something that size, that scale?
Oh yeah, I believe so. It was so big.
It seemed to take up the sky.
Yeah,
our view.
It was just impossibly, big.
He's always described it in the past. Again, when we've been asked, larger than the supersized Walmart parking lot and all of that surrounding area.
And yet traffic remained completely unfazed by it all?
Right. Yeah, there weren't like people pointing in the sky or pulling over or, freaking out, end of days kind of things. But yeah, no, it was just like nothing was going on. And, it was just so huge.
Yeah, now we'll get back to that. I think that's an interesting element as far as people not taking notice of things like that.
Right.
And of course, this is before everyone had a camera in their pocket. So, yeah, how long did the sighting last?
Well, just a few seconds. I mean, Alta never turned back. The traffic was moving, so we weren't going to just pull over. It was kind of a major thoroughfare through the town that we lived in. So, we just kind of kept on going, and like I never looked back at it. After I looked back that second time, of course, I was driving, and it was on the right hand side of the road. So I had to focus on driving also. And I mean, we went on to the restaurant, and
we never spoke about it.
Yeah, we never.
It absolutely was a non-event, except it wasn't. The next morning we learned it was an event. It was something.
Right. You had confirmation that you saw it, and so did others.
Right.
Okay.
Nothing we wanted, I can assure you. We were trying to stay asleep.
Okay, now let's go to the French Quarter. You're in Louisiana, the French Quarter, and you have a coworker. What exactly is it? Kristen or Christine that is your coworker?
Right, we call her Christine in the book.
Okay, Christine. And so you and your coworker experienced something after that. What year is this?
Okay, well, we moved to the quarter shortly after our experience we just shared with you. That high strangeness, within no amount of time, we moved to the French Quarter. That would have been 1995. So we had every kind of insane, anomalous experiences happening. Um, I mean, numerous types of anomalous experiences happening to us almost from the moment we moved to the French Quarter. That again in 1995. Now you fast forward to the time you're asking us about, which was 1997.
Okay, so
So,
within 2 years, you've stacked up a bunch of stories, a bunch of encounters,
oh
and
boy,
the creme de la creme is about ready to happen to you.
oh boy, oh
Okay.
boy.
Well,
Right.
before we get there, what kind of things between those 2 years? Don't skimp on any of this here. What sort of things are we talking
Oh
about? I
sure.
mean, you just seen a
A lot.
mothership. How much better can it get?
Man. Well, we end up moving above a voodoo temple. Ta-da! I mean, it's our life has been so bizarre. This voodoo temple it was considered the authentic, if you will, and it had a huge courtyard, and it was over 200 years old, and the property, and it had what had been slave quarters had been converted into small efficiency apartments. Voodoo priestess lived on the property. She had her quarters on the other side of the. This was like in a square, if you will. Uh, you you couldn't tell from the street. You come through big wrought iron gate, and you walk to the back, and you're in this big square. That's a courtyard, right? This voodoo priestess had chickens and everything. I mean, it was just so bizarre. Chad and I walked into a world we were clueless about. We had no idea what we were walking into. So it ends up we start experiencing the anomalous is everything from what people have labeled as poltergeist to Chad had an absolute full face face uh, encounter with the voodoo priest that had died right before we moved to the property. Um, I had I had a time, well, the only way I know how to describe it is a time slip. And it would appear that in that time slip experience, I was uh, trans, I don't know, transferred back into the time of when that property had slaves. And I was experiencing what felt and appeared to me as possibly three young teenagery um, females that were women of color that I was sure, and the way they appeared and everything else led me to feel as if they had been slaves on that property. And in that same encounter, I had what appeared to be a Virgin Mary like, and I won't say apparition, being that I had a full blown encounter with, all happening at the same time. A time slip with this crazy experience going on. We had a fire take place in the temple. Now the temple is below us, and we're the temple is below on ground floor, but not directly below our apartment, right next to it.
It was kind of like a fourplex.
So if you don't mind, if you share that, Chad.
The voodoo priestess, she had, the temple on one side and a little gift shop on the other, and we were kind of above the gift shop.
So I wake up in the middle of the night, and Chad and I have never had children. So I'd like to point out we've had a crazy life, but we've never had children, just to give ourselves, I guess, the freedom to have a crazy life. Our babies have always been critters, everything from alligators to puppies. And at that time, we had a Rottie doe, a pretty good sized puppy. And so I point that out because her name was Neffy, short for Nefertiti. She seemed to get knocked out, just to kind of frame that, in having experiences. Like she's knocked out.
Well,
Or goes
explain that. How does that look?
She's in that apartment when I'm having that time slip experience, if you will. Right before this experience takes place, I have another friend that's visiting, and this is in the daytime. This is in the afternoon. When the friend comes over, we're just going to have a girls' afternoon. I'm not working that day. Chad's at work. It's me and my friend and nephew. All of a sudden, everything changes. And what I mean by that is she gets very sleepy. Now, we were going to have drinks. I admit that. But we just had a drink, I think, not even. I don't even remember us even having a drink, just getting one started or what have you. I had a day bed. Next thing I know, she needs to take a nap. What? Now, she's very young. She was 15 years younger than I am. And in her late 20s and very healthy and so on. Well, she lays down on that day bed and I want to say literally just goes straight to sleep. My dog did the same thing. And then the next thing I know, I'm like, well, what the hey? I go into my bedroom because I'm like, well, apparently it's nap time here. Now, I don't sleep. I'm not a sleeper. But I go in my bedroom, I sit down on my bed, on the side of my bed, and the next thing I know, I'm back in my living room and everything has changed. And it was what I just briefly described to you about the experience of having females standing in my living room. My living room, it was my apartment, but it absolutely looked old and old and dirty and ancient. And so anyhow, in
Well,
this experience,
Alta, describe how realistic this was and what the transition from that time to another time is like. I mean, are you seeing the walls start to change and transition, the floorboards, everything is transitioning, or is it just sudden?
it was instant. That's the only way I know how to describe it.
Hmm.
I remember sitting down, consciously, I remember sitting down on the side of my bed, not laid down, just, sat down on the side of the edge of my bed. And the next thing I know, I'm standing in my living room and everything had transitioned, all this change. And so, you know, that's, that was a crazy enough experience in itself. And then we have a fire. Well, Chad and I are in bed, middle of the night, and all of a sudden I smell smoke. And I'm trying to wake Chad up, and he's groggy, in and out, and he just basically tells me, yeah, I'm dreaming, and he doesn't smell anything. He goes right back to sleep. I did too, which was really weird. That's strange behavior for me. I have a hard time sleeping. But I go back to sleep, and the next thing I know, I'm smelling that smoke again. Now we've got white smoke coming into our apartment, coming through our doors, and it's coming right into our bedroom. And so he knows it now. So we fly out of the bed, and Chad, I'll have you pick that up.
Yeah, of course, in the French Quarter, any fire is, a big deal. And so
All the buildings are attached.
yeah, because all the, and it spread so fast. Matter of fact, we just had a big fire, 5 alarm fire,
in the
cut
quarter.
last week here in the quarter. But anyway, she wakes me up, the second time, and I'm like, okay, I smell the smoke. So we run down into the courtyard, and fire, fire, fire. So everybody comes out, call the fire department. They show up there fast. I mean, they're fast. And there's probably 10, 15 of these firemen. It's me, these firemen, and then the voodoo priestess. And we're walking around. Now we can see smoke in the building, but there is no fire. There's no fire.
And
so
we are having weird. I'm sorry. I just wanted, because Chad, he was in there trying to help, whatever with fire. I'm standing in the courtyard with all the residents, and we're having very bizarre lightning kind of strikes going on above and around us with no rain, but just this very weird setting, as if, and I feel seems like we've mentioned maybe this before, but certainly in recounting that, it was like we were on some set of a movie, and some director said, hit the lightning. It was so bizarre. and it just set the tone for this billowing smoke coming out of this temple. So you all are in there.
Yeah, so we're in there, and I mean, we're looking and looking and looking, and of course, she, she had all these little altars and different things set up, and she had one altar set up. It was like her wedding anniversary, and she had like this one altar set up for their wedding anniversary. She had her, wedding dress and his wedding suit up on the wall, and then with the candles and everything. Well, one of the candles, was like those jar candles, and one had gotten so low it kind of burst. The bottom, it traveled, the little things, that the trinkets and stuff, it kind of followed up. It went to the wall. It starts going up the wall. It gets maybe 3 foot up the wall, and there's these pictures of like the saints and stuff. Well, it stops right there. Now, right above the pictures of the saints is her wedding gown and everything. So if that would have caught fire, it would have been much worse, of course. But yeah, it was just really bizarre. Now that the firemen, they're tripping out. They're like,
so not
they were ready to leave as soon as they walked through the front door. They're like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
big old beefy, firemen don't want to be at that voodoo temple.
Yeah,
right.
She's renowned.
Yeah, and he asked her. I think he asked her. The fireman asked her to put her candles out for the night, and do what you need to do. But
we're out of here.
And thank God it didn't happen. And but yeah, it was really crazy. It was just very strange the way it just stopped right there, because there was plenty of things for that fire to keep traveling on.
Again, that property in those buildings, almost 300 years old when I researched it. So yeah, that, and then if I might then, again, all these different types of anomalous experiences, if I might add also then, we left that apartment. Again, we were there less than a year. And then we moved in further into the heart of the quarter as we were doing better financially and could afford to live better. But it seemed like high strangeness was involved with everywhere we lived. Let me just add that. But back to that voodoo temple area, we lived there in 95. You fast forward to 10 years, to 2005, right before Katrina hit. Now, Chad and I left New Orleans. We left Louisiana in 2001, so we're long gone by then. But this young couple moved into our apartment. They were somewhat locals that were enjoyed, if you will. They were bar people. She was a bartender. I believe that was his gig for a long time. A young couple that everybody seemed to like well enough, but these were hardcore, good drinkers and apparently good druggers. And they move into our apartment, and it turns in now to a infamous murder-suicide. He killed her in our apartment right after Katrina happened. He killed her, and then he dismembered her, and then he went to a hotel. I don't remember which one in the quarter, but went to, if I understood correctly, to the rooftop. Sorry, he killed her in that apartment and left her for 12 days, if I remember correctly. And he turned up the air conditioning and left her for 12 days. And if I understand, in the bathtub. And then he dismembered. And then he goes to this hotel. He goes to the rooftop. And if we understand the story correctly, he basically drinks. He's been drugging and drinking all this time, goes to the rooftop and he jumps, hits the ground obviously, and is killed. And he's got a note in the pocket for the detectives and the police when they find, when they get to the body, directing him to our old apartment. When they get there,
the significance of turning up the AC with the body was so the smell didn't go down the hall. Is that the thinking?
That would be the only thought, because it was it was summertime, if I'm not mistaken, and it just, it's hot here in the winter as far as I'm concerned. So that, that would be the only thing. We're not positive, just repeating what we've understood since we learned about all of this. That couple is called the Zach and Addie story. It's had a lot of airtime on television on these TV paranormal shows. Paranormal Lockdown was a show that we actually saw the video of it, where this TV show, these little famous Ghostbuster people, forgive my language, came and spent apparently the night in our apartment. But when they got back to the apartment, the detectives, they discovered that he had dismembered, and there were parts of her cooking on the top of the stove, parts of her in the refrigerator, and parts of her in the oven. And
I remember this episode. There was a strong lingering feeling still inside. So that was your apartment that I saw in that episode. Wow.
That was in 10 years prior. And with all of the anomalous and everything, the high strangeness that was going on with Chad and I, nothing like that. It wasn't, what I mean by that, it wasn't, I had more issue, I felt personally, I'll let Chad speak for himself, with the human factor of what was going on in that property. We're not voodoo people. We're not trying to say anything negative. It just wasn't our world. And it just was a conflict. It became a conflict. And so that was my issue. But certainly didn't feel, with all the craziness that was happening to us, what we seemed to be experiencing. When Chad had his encounter with the voodoo priest who had died, he was the real gig. He was from Belize originally, and brought all of his learnings, if you will, to New Orleans and started that voodoo temple. And then he died there. And that's who Chad encountered. And they had quite a, it felt to me to hear Chad describe it like it was a fun fest for the voodoo priest. Like, giggles. Yeah, it was a giggle time for him.
I think he was just kind of messing with me.
Right. Never felt anything evil, though.
No, more like a trickster kind of, but not so,
It's this maniacal, this insanity. So some hotshot New York author brought himself from New York to New Orleans apparently and stayed for some time and wrote a book. The book is Shake the Devil Off, I believe is the title of it, if anybody's interested in exploring that. But that was the beginnings of our beginning in the quarter. And then if you had any other questions of that area, would certainly try to answer. But
so this all transpired before 1997. Right. This is the 2-year flap.
Exactly, the 2-year flap. That's a great term. I love it. He's a chef, and he worked in bars, most of his adult life. And at that time, we're finding our way in the quarter. We're working out real well. We suit it. It seems to suit us. And he's working on bourbon in some really nice places. He's an oyster shucker. That's some real art in itself. But anyhow, he was having all kinds of experiences in some of those great big bar restaurants, ghosty stuff. I kind of babied up the language just to, I think, survive a lot of it and just take the scary out of it. But he was having all kinds of experiences, it sounds like, as he shared with me, like I'm having privately in our apartment when he wasn't there. He's got friends out there apparently he can't see either that are hanging with him while he's doing whatever he's doing at his jobs and so on. So yeah, it's very active. It didn't seem to be, it was a flap. Absolutely.
Okay, so you described almost a hypnotic state of others around you. You described ghost. You described time slips of sorts. Fire without smoke. All sorts of clues that the French Quarter is super active, but something incredible starts to happen in the year 1997. So let's talk about that.
So at this point now, I'm working in a shop that a family owned. They started the business in 1929. They are, I call them and refer to them as an exclusive reading salon. what I mean, again, it all walk of life would come there to get readings, but they started back in 1929, and my understanding is it wasn't even legal back then. So the wealthy would get brought in and dropped off, and it was referred to as a, like a tea house where they'd come to get their little tea and sandwich or what have you. And then they'd slip out in the back and get a reading and then slip out another whatever door and leave. And so it had quite the history. So I was pretty pleased when they brought me on board because I'm like, wow, this is a beautiful location. They work with all walk of life, all type of. I'm truly not into ego as best as I can help it. So celebrity doesn't mean much to me other than they can afford whatever they can afford. But we worked with all walks of life and it was very enjoyable for me. And I fit in well. And so with that said, they had hired a young woman we call her Christine in the book. She, at the time, I'll give you age range, she was 24, Chad was 34, and I had just turned 40. Now, 3 months prior to this event that took place in 97 was my birthday. It happens to be like right about now. I'll have a birthday in about a week or so. It was going to become my 40th birthday. The idea here is my mom's going to move to the French Quarter long distance, come help me celebrate the 40th birthday, and we're going to all start a life with each other and just take care of each other. Well, that was not meant to be. She died on that day, long distance, and it was huge because nothing seems to have been normal. Whatever normal is, I've never experienced it. So my mom passes, and I'm beyond devastated, and Chad is broken. He and she were very close. So now you fast forward 3 months. Now we're in September. Everybody is feeling horrible for me. My mother had been to visit. We were mixed native blood. She was considered a native elder. She had a lot of respect. Everybody loved her. So they were missing, and they feeling bad for us. So I was having a very hard time shaking it. And still to this day, it's still a struggle. Okay, so I walk in. Christine has been hired. She's 24 at the time. She's tall, slender, long blonde hair. I like to describe her as she's got a garious laugh. She's very sincere, but she's a no mess around kind of chick, and she seems to have always known her path. And her path has always seemed to be consistent, which is saving Mother Earth and helping and trying to save abused children and animals and everything else in the middle. Okay, so that was her declaration from the time we meet. Well, from the minute I meet her, she feels familiar. She feels I'm positive I know her. I've had that experience a few times and it's proved to be accurate in a weird way. And so I felt I knew her and it seemed instant for me. We're family. So she's very concerned when she realizes that my mom has died and that I'm having a hard time. She asked me if I wanted to go out and have dinner and drinks in the quarter that night after work. I accepted. I tell her, let's call Chad. At that time, now we've moved from that infamous voodoo temple to this beautiful, like the kind of places you see on television. If you see anything nice about the French Quarter with the balconies and all of that, we move into this beautiful townhouse, kind of in the center or more centrally located in the quarter. So we're only a couple blocks away from the shop. So we walk. That's the objective. French Quarter is about 13 blocks square, I understand. Okay, so we're going to call Chad and have him come join us. He's all about it. He gets dressed and walks over and meets us. We step out of the shop. It's about 9:30 when she locks the doors. Christina's been hired to manage the shop, sell their beautiful items. They sell very expensive items from around the world, as well as several of us as readers that work for the shop. Her job's kind of to navigate all of that. So we step out of the shop, and the minute we all step out, I remember, now, even though I work kind of in the world of metaphysics and what have you, I don't walk around and normally talk like that. I don't use a lot of, as others would call it, woo-woo kind of language. But on this night when we stepped out of the shop, I remember real specifically indicating that the energy felt weird, that it felt off. Something was weird. Now, it was that powerful enough for me to say that out loud. I remember both of them acknowledging it as well. So it wasn't just me. And so then we start our journey, and we are going to start on Bourbon Street and work our way across the border. And we're going to be spontaneous. We have no plans. We'll do as we please. Christina at the time had never been married and had no children either. So we're all free birds. So it begins, we start off in this one spot. Our first location is this rather large, 2 or 3 story. Chad's pointing 2 fingers.
Well, it's
I'm about
three,
to
but
have him take it over. You go ahead, Chad.
yeah, it's 3-story, but like the restaurant was just the first floor and second floor.
And
So
this
it's
is
a large
something
place.
that you've done before. This isn't, you guys have gone out before in the evening with friends and family. This is nothing new, right? This is something you've done many times, I would imagine.
Right.
That's right.
Okay.
And not only that, but this first location Chad worked at
Yeah,
when we
this
Okay.
first
was
moved to the quarter.
a place
So
I used
we're
to work at. Yeah.
right where he also had ghosty experiences. So we're real familiar with the owner and the management and what have you. We didn't live there, but we were absolutely familiar, and so that's where we're going to start. This place had a cabana. I call it like a cabana bar right off the street, and then you go through a breezeway into a big, beautiful courtyard, and that's a restaurant. And then you go up this beautiful wood, is how I remember it, swirly staircase to a, I call it, it looked to me like a disco. It had a
Yeah.
disco ball in the center. It's a club, with the balcony, and again, where all the tourism and everybody hangs. So it's great. It's big. That's the whole idea. Well, on this night, when we get there, you go ahead, Chad.
Well, even when we before we even got there, it was like when we were walking down. I mean, we were walking down Bourbon Street, and it was like,
Oh,
where
right.
is everybody?
Right.
I mean, there was a few stragglers, like how she calls
You.
them, but I mean, it was like
Nobody.
really weird. It was like we walked into the Twilight Zone. It was
That's
like,
right.
where is everybody? When
Wow.
we get into the when we get to this club, this bar restaurant that again I used to work at, we knew the band, we knew the bartenders. We go in and there's no band. They always had a live band in the front. There's only one guy there, and
In
he's
the whole
in the whole
place.
restaurant, bar, and everything. He's like the
Right.
manager. He's
Just
like
one.
send everybody home or whatever. I don't know. There's no patrons. We sat and talked to him. Now he was a Mardi Gras Indian, and so he takes us up and shows us his regalia.
Which
We
is
come
weird.
back down. Yeah,
This is all weird story as well.
yeah. We didn't even hang out because there was nothing going on. We're like, okay, well, we'll go find something, maybe a little more lively. And
Oh
we,
my God, someplace alive, because there was
yeah,
nobody there.
right.
And
And are,
we weren't thinking nothing high strangeness, paranormal. Just where is everybody? This is weird.
and you must have been
So
questioning those around you, like, where is everybody? Were you guys, told that, yeah, this is odd, by other people?
no, because there was
Okay.
nobody around.
Okay.
There was the one dude. He happened to be, well, Chad just went ahead and mentioned it. So let me just kind of frame that off to how weird this was. This guy happens to be this black guy that we had been very close to, but we hadn't seen in a long time. Well, he did happen to meet my mom. And as I mentioned earlier, we're of mixed native blood, regalia. My mother and I were traditional dancers, growing up and very involved in that world. He knew this and was making it very clear to me how sad he was to learn that my mom had died. Oh, hey, I got my Mardi Gras regalia upstairs. You want to see it? And I'm like, what? Now, this guy is a Mardi Gras Indian. That's a huge thing for Louisiana. That's huge. And specifically New Orleans. I had no idea. Dad had no idea. We had no idea until all of a sudden he drops this on us on this weird night. Well, okay. It's all weird anyway. Let's go upstairs and we'll see this regalia. This is how I remember it. I remember going up into an empty, completely vacant, empty, dark dance club with a silver ball in the center of it, like an old disco ball. And his regalia, I remember it being red, like very red. And it seemed like it almost had a light on it. Now, I was so blown away, I was not taking it in. It was like, oh, this is weird. Because this is now reminding me about my mom who's just died. I have chosen to go out this night for the first time so that we can try to celebrate. We're trying to have some kind of celebration. This is taking me into a mental place I don't need to be. So that helped kind of just, let's get out of here. I'm, trying to say nicely to Chad, and well, I didn't have to say it to her because she's ready to go also. She'd never been there. So, I mean, it was just bizarre. And there was nobody around to talk to. There was nobody around to, nothing. He was it.
Well,
When
explain
we
for
got that
people that
conversation,
don't know anything about Mardi Gras, about Bourbon Street, about the French Quarter, how bizarre that is. It's unheard of. It would be the equivalent of going to LA and not getting into traffic on I-5. It's just an unheard of quantitative, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, Bourbon Street and a lot of the clubs in the French Quarter, and they're 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
nonstop.
I mean, Bourbon Street's a 24-hour party.
Nonstop.
And
that should kind of frame that for people.
This is early. This is like 9, or kind of. This was about like
about the time people would be out
and it's about
having dinner and
this
starting to party.
When,
But
good
the
weather.
reality is-
Good weather. There's no emergency.
Right.
There's no reason for this.
That's right.
Right.
There's no reason. And so it's the word vacant. The stragglers, a few stragglers, and to me that seems like only just I'm struggling even to take note of that. Maybe because again it was there were no people. There wasn't people. We leave that place. We head on down the road. We go to another spot. Now Chad's mentioning a place I don't remember at all, and I thought I remembered all of that time very well. But he's brought this up recently, so it almost seems like either I've closed something out and something's coming forward for him, so I'll have him.
Yeah, we stop at this one spot, or we don't even stop. We're like, okay, well, this place over here, it's a little more local. Let's go over there. It's the tourist start
more towards the center of the court.
Yeah, and we get over there, and again, it's just the bartender. There's somebody back behind the bar. We look in. We don't even go in. We look in. He's by himself, so we're like, well, here we go again. So we move on closer over to Esplanade and Frenchman, and it was
which happens to be the opposite side of the French Quarters. So again, not realizing you're not there and not seeing where we're talking about. We've now made it across the quarter. We're on the opposite side of it. We go to our last spot, as far as we're concerned, that we know is going to be a party because it always is. It's where the locals hang, but it's also a great tourism area. It's called the Dragon's Den. It's still, it's still a happening place now, but we're talking 1997. So there's a Thai restaurant on the bottom, and then you go up some stairs, as we had done for a few years prior. Anytime we wanted to go out, that's where we would go. And you go upstairs, and it's like the way to describe it, I said it lovingly, jokingly, because I've never been in an opium bar, but it might make me almost think this way. You sat on the floor on cushions, had great big mirrors, huge mirrors that, are a mirror from floor to ceiling, great big long thing with black drapes around it.
The walls were painted black.
Painted black. And then the band, we were usually friends with. We always knew, or, it was always just a very comfortable place. Had a tiny balcony that everybody pile out on. And it was just fun. It was just very familiar. Not this night. So I gave you the backdrop just so you'd understand, not this night. The three of us go up those stairs. Now, for the first time that I ever remember, can't ever account for it in the past, the door is shut and there's a sign on it, and they want a cover charge. That's just never happened. That door's never been closed. You just walk right in. You've never had to pay a cover charge. Well, on this night, that's the way it rolled. So at this point now, I'm over it. And I'm starting to get pretty huffy. And under our breath, but we pivot on the stairs, and we're grumbling all the way back down the stairs. Never had to do it before, not going to do it tonight. What is going on?
Yeah, I tipped the band.
Right. Yeah, right. We always tip the band. We get back out on the street. We have one more spot, and it's only because it's right there. All we have to do is walk a few feet, cross the street, the very small street, and the last spot called Checkpoint Charlie's. You go ahead, Chad.
And this is it's a dive bar,
Big
very
dive.
dark, but they always had live music, and we get over there, and again, nobody in the place. Now this place, again, they've got a dormant,
we've never seen a doorman at this dive before.
Right. And again, there's nobody to dormant.
Right.
I mean, it's closed.
I blow past him because I can't believe he's standing there. I'll just take this part over for a second. I look inside. Well, you can imagine. It's empty. It's empty. Now the doorman is this cute little blonde surfer looking little boy that looks like he's about the same age as our cute blonde friend. So I'm thinking, nothing high strangeness, just, well, that's convenient. At least he's cute. And she's single. And he's got a big smile on his face. Right. I'm trying to find some party or peace someplace. So we see them, we leave those two standing there, conversing, seeming pretty happy with each other. I'm over it at this point. And I tell Chad as privately as I can, as we start walking away from them, there's a stoop about midway down the block. I go sit myself down on that stoop, grumbling to him, I'm so bored, I just want to go home. I mean, I'm feeling like I'm Dorothy and Oz right now, sounding like her even. I just want to go home. Well, I remember him agreeing with me. And then that's the last thing that we know collectively. The next thing I know, I'm sitting up, Indian style, on my daybed in my living room. And it's somewhere between 8 and 9 the next morning. And the sun is blaring through the window. And I didn't wake up. I like to point this out because it's very different. I didn't wake up. I came to. My eyes popped open, and I was rubbing my arms automatically. And I felt something in my upper arm that I never remembered being there before. And then it's just pure chaos from that moment forward. But that was that corner. Now, Chad, if I may, and then you take it, of course, Toby, anywhere you'd like to take us. We love to share this, and we're so appreciative you're interested. Chad's had regression since that 97 event. Several years later, probably about 2002, 2003, somebody gave him regression, and he has an account of what happened from that corner forward. But if you hear this, take note that in Chad's account in that regression, I'm not in his story at all past the corner. In my memory, and I'm the only one out of the three, it would seem, that's been returned, whatever has happened to us, that has memory of the in-between. Nothing about coming off the street and nothing about being returned home. But I have a full-blown account of in-between. Our friend Christine, she has no memory of that corner. The last thing she remembers is she's on that street with us at that corner. But then the next thing she knows, it's somewhere between 3 and 4 in the morning, and she's now behind the steering wheel of her moving car. It's moving slowly. It hit a parked car. It knocked off her rear view mirror. And this is what she said jolted her to. I'll mention last, the car was in another section of the city from where she parked it earlier that day. So, I mean, it's just wide open. So much.
Chad, you have some kind of hypnotic regression. I would imagine a fair amount of details were brought out. Was that something recorded?
It was recorded, but the quality of the recording was so bad. I mean, we just used like the old-fashioned cassette tape player, and it just, I mean, we've had people take it and try to on different machines and,
It's missing now. We don't even know where it is any longer. But it was so dreadful to try to hear it.
Right.
The young woman who did the regression was not trained in this area. Now, again, you do better when you know better.
Right.
We paid her, and it was all worked out, but we didn't understand that she did not understand ET kind of stuff, out there kind of stuff. I'm just trying to fill in that language. And so the tape recording itself was so dreadfully low, you can't hear. And then also we discovered that she would get so scared when Chad would start describing the beings that he was encountering in that event, that she would stop him and move him away from it. So there is still so much in there that was not allowed to come out.
And so much in there that still needs to come out. It hasn't been attempted again?
No.
Okay. Chad, tell us about that. Tell us what you remember.
Okay. So again, we're standing on that stoop. This is what comes out in the regression. We're standing there on the stoop, just Alta and I. Our friend comes back and joins us. We're sitting there talking, and Alta's like saying, I just want to go home. Now I get the girls. I see this light, very bright white light coming from kind of around the corner on what they call Frenchman Street. I get the girls' attention. We walk around the corner and we see this orb it's probably about 12 foot in diameter. It's about 15 foot off the ground, and it's probably about a half a block down the street. And it was just this pure white, glowing, beautiful light, just very clean. And it sits there for just a few seconds, and then it just comes towards us and engulfs us. It takes us in. It was, and it orb-ducts us. That's where we kind of get the name of the book from, is it kind of orb-ducts us. My next memory is I'm walking down this corridor, this hall. It's kind of gently turning to the right. The walls are very metallic looking, but no rivets, no bolts, no seams. Everything just seems to flow together as far as like the wall, the ceiling, and the floor. I'm following this little being, and he's probably about 3.5 foot tall, big bulbous head, kind of a pale gray skin tone. Now he doesn't look like the little grays that you see on TV. He kind of had substance to him. He was kind of dwarfish or like a small person. He kind of waddled when he walked. Now I only saw him from behind. I never saw his face or anything that I remember. He's wearing this like one piece jumpsuit, kind of skin tight, like a diver would wear, almost kind of like. To my left, kind of out of the corner of my eye, I could see a tall blonde female, walking beside me. Now this does describe our friend that was with me, but I didn't turn to look to see if it was her, so I have no idea. My next memory is I'm in this room, and the room just seems infinite. It's huge. It's dark, 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 but it just seems huge. And kind of off to the distance, to my left again, I see a tall blonde female laying on an examining table, or like a metallic looking table. There's three beings around her, one on each side and like one behind her head, at her head. She never seemed to be in distress. She was nude, but her whole body from head to toe was kind of censored, kind of like when they show body parts on regular TV, they kind of blur everything out. And these beings around her were probably 7 to 8 foot tall, very buggish, praying mantis kind of looking, big eyes, their mouth closer to like, their chin area. Their arms were like folded, kind of like a praying mantis. But they were wearing these cloaks, almost kind of like a Grim Reaper without the hoodie. It's kind of like big black cloaks. And again, she never seemed to be in distress, but I focused my attention back to my immediate. Now, again, this room was very dark, but I could see, there was lighting around this person on the table, and there was lighting around me. But I don't remember seeing any kind of light source. So I don't know where the light was from. But I could, kind of see my immediate. I'm sitting in this chair, almost like a dentist chair, but a lot more comfortable. I throughout my experience, I want to say this. Throughout my experience, I was never nervous. I was never scared. I was never, you know, I- I'm a very anxious person. So I was very calm. I seem to be very calm.
But by all rights, Chad, you should have been scared. I mean, that's
Yeah, right. You would
very
think,
frightening what you described.
right, right. You would think, you'd be freaked out.
Hmm.
Just like I looked over to my right, and there's this little blue bee. And when I say blue, he's this vibrant, electric, neon, vibrant, just yummy blue. Now he looks a lot like the grays that you see on TV. Big almond-shaped eyes, small slit-for mouth. Big head, tiny. He was 3.5, 4 foot tall. Uh, Very thin, very very thin. 4 digits on each hand. Don't remember about the feet. Um, but his his aura, his presence was that of like a shaman slash scientist slash professor, just this ancient knowledge and wisdom, and you know, but also the holistic, shamanistic, and the scientist kind of combined, kind of
Now, how are you picking up this information?
all in my mind.
Hmm.
This is all in my mind. He goes over and he picks up this box and he has it in his right hand. He takes his left hand and he puts it into the side of the box. And when he pulls his hand out, there's this like little blobby kind of substance. It kind of looks like that slime now, that translucent slime that the kids play with, but it was kind of free floating above his hand. It was kind of undulating and moving around, kind of blobbish looking. It was blue like him. It had like little um, metal, glittery, flaky looking stuff in it. Now, I don't even remember him setting the box down, but all of a sudden he takes his right hand. Again, he only has 4 digits. He takes his two middle fingers up, and almost kind of like a peace sign, or in his outer fingers folded in towards his palm. Kind of like you see, depictions of Christ or Buddha, in this
Right,
light.
right, right. Yeah.
When he does this, this substance starts spinning, and it's going faster and faster and faster, like a top spinning. And when it does this, the blueness and the little glittery, metally, flaky looking stuff inside it kind of dissipate out of it, and they're kind of rotating around it, like the sun and the planets and the stars and the galaxy and all. And I remember thinking to him, well, it starts slowing down, and it had turned into this double pointed crystal, very clean, very clear, you know, double pointed, uh, kind of a pyramid shape on each end crystal. And and then I remember thinking to him, why are you showing this to me? I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. I'm not an engineer. This is something very important. Why are you showing this to me? And again, this is all telepathic, or through the mind. He tells me that I will know in time, or when it's time. I'm not quite sure which he said, but I would know in time, or when it's time. My next memory is I'm in this other room. There's only 3 walls, 2 that are very straight, one that's kind of concave. And again, the walls are very metallic. Not a very big room, probably the size of an average, living room or whatever. And I guess the longest wall, the wall that was concave, was about 15 foot long, and the others maybe 10, 11 foot long. There's just, now this is the weird part of the story that I always hate to tell this, to say this, but it's part of the story. It's part of my experience, And there's this overstuffed looking, overstuffed leather chair, black leather chair in the middle of the room. Exactly in the middle of the room. And I remember thinking to myself, first, how out of place it looked. And second, it looks comfortable, but it's not. So I never sat in it. I focused my attention. Now, again, the walls are very metallic looking, no seams, no bolts, no rivets, nothing. All of a sudden, I walked a little closer to the wall that's kind of concave out. And I get a little closer to it, and what I thought was a solid wall, I could see through it like a window. The whole wall. Again, it was 15 foot long and probably 10-foot ceilings. So it's huge, and I can see stars and planets. It's like I'm out in the galaxy. I'm out in the universe somewhere. It's dark. It's blackness, and I'm kind of standing there in awe, kind of like trying to take this all in, and how beautiful it looked, and all this. And all of a sudden, like right outside this wall window, there's this little craft that shoots past, and it goes past real fast. Again, it's just right on the other side of this wall window, and it goes and gets about maybe 9-10 foot past me, and it stops just like on a dime, and comes back, and it's like right in front of my face. It was like almost as surprised to see me as I was it, because I knew it was seeing me or picking up on me somehow. And it was kind of the shape of like a rugby ball or a football. It was probably 3 foot long and 2 foot wide. It had little lights blinking on it, little metal things moving around on it, little wires and little antennas moving around. I could feel intelligence coming out of it. And, it was like, again, it was like surprised to see me. It was like, okay, look at the little monkey in the window or something like that. I don't know. It sits there for about 30 seconds, maybe at the most, and then it just shoots off in the direction it was going to in the first place. And my next memory is waking up in bed the next morning.
At that port window there that you just described, are there beings around you at all trying to educate you on what you're looking at? What's the scene like there?
No, I'm in the room by myself.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost felt like I was in a waiting room.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like the waiting room in a hospital or something, or I don't know. Just
Mm-hmm.
if I was totally by myself, nothing, no other beings or
Mm-hmm.
anything that I can remember.
Were your senses alive enough to remember things like temperature and smell? Were you picking up on anything other than just sight?
No, yeah, I don't remember any smells or, no,
Were
or
you?
temperature. I don't
Yeah,
remember.
and
I felt comfortable.
you were clothed?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So you don't remember any procedures or anything like that being done on you?
No, I don't remember any kind of anything like that.
With the praying mantis type, you said they were wearing cloaks without hoods. Describe what they look like, as far as you said they were pretty tall. They seem to have insect praying mantis type qualities. Were they green? Were they yellow? What'd they look like?
Kind of like a green gray almost.
Mm-hmm.
And now again, they were kind of off in the distance. I didn't see them. They were probably a good 30 foot away from me.
So this is a large craft, very large. Yeah.
Like I said, so that big room, it just seemed infinite. Again, it was so dark I couldn't see the walls,
Mm-hmm.
but it just seemed huge. You know, it
Mm-hmm.
just seemed like a big, almost like a warehouse size or a, you know, something huge. You know, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and their their heads were, you know, very, again, kind of that triangle shaped kind of,
Mm-hmm.
you know, bulbous, but, you know, kind of a point, you know, to their
Mm-hmm.
bottom, you know, the jaw area, their mouths very close to their jaw, uh,
Mm-hmm.
big eyes,
And
and
with
again,
the
their arms were kind of crooked.
with the blondes, you know, the Nordic type looking entities there, what did their facial features look like? Did you get a chance to see the one laying on the table at all? Was it too far away?
Right, right, and the whole head, the whole body was was uh, censored. You know, it was like blurred out. It was blurry. I couldn't really see who or what or anything like that.
It was
But
blurred
I
out.
could tell. I
Well,
could,
describe what you mean by blurry.
like, you know, kind of like when you watch a TV and they blur like body parts out. You know, like on regular TV. You know,
Mm-hmm.
or I don't know if you've ever watched Naked and Afraid or something like that. You know, they blur
Right.
out the body
Right.
parts and stuff.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. Right.
right.
So
You
was
know,
that done digitally? I mean, did it seem like it was a digital filter in front of them? Is that the best way to say it? Like a blurry digital filter would be like on Naked and Afraid, just like the little bars in front of their privates.
right,
Okay,
right.
weird. Okay, I mean,
Well, it was from head to toe. You know,
okay,
the whole body was blurred like
okay. So the whole body. Okay, that's still very strange. I wonder why they didn't let you see that image,
that. Right.
or if that was even the case. Okay, so after you look through this viewing port, there you see what looks like the star system that you're in outer space. Can you see things that you recognize? Can you see Earth? Can you see planets, Mars, the sun? Or is it just so vast and different that you don't recognize anything?
Right. Yeah. I mean, everything seemed tiny. It didn't seem
Hmm.
like we were close to any like planets or anything
Hmm.
like that that I can remember. And
Hmm.
you know, and it happened so fast because when that craft shoots past me, you know, I'm focused on it now. You know, so I didn't really have a lot of chance to, you know, kind of explore and go, well, that looks like that, or that looks like that. You know, I don't remember colors or anything like that as far as like being able to see a planet or something close
Hmm.
enough to see, you know, the color of the
Right. And so you,
whatever it is.
the next thing you remember is you're back at home.
Right. And, you know, I wake up in bed the next morning around 9 or so. And, you know, the first thing I do is jump up out of bed, like, and I, you know, run to Alta. And I'm like, what happened to us last night? Because, you know, and this happened within, you know, she gets off work at 9:30, and you know, the last thing we remember is 11 o'clock. So it's
Hmm.
only been an hour and a half.
Hmm.
And you know, I mean, I'm not saying, you know, but you know, I we had drinks before, but we didn't even remember drinking that night. You know, we hadn't even had a chance to get to a place to have drinks with people. So you know, it's not like we just blacked out.
Hmm.
You know, I woke up, you know,
No,
with a with
that's very important to take note of. No alcohol, no drugs. And when
Hmm.
we've been challenged in the past, that anybody's ever heard us, I mean, has challenged us over that drug business, we like to, you know, inform folks there was nobody around to drug us. You know, that could have almost been welcome. With all the insanity we've been through and been put through,
Hmm.
and seems to, you know, we've just had current experiences on Valentine's Day, this Valentine's Day. So it is consistent. But the point is again, we've never, we've always been very clear, Chad and I, consistent.
But
that
Alta, you have physical ramifications of this too. I mean, we're going
right,
into physical evidence. This is not just a mind trip off a bad
right,
dose. Okay, so tell us what
right.
happened as far as you can remember, Alta. All right, that's part one of a two-part series. You'll have to tune in next Sunday to get the rest of the story from Alta, whose Alta experience is way different than Chad's, let alone Christine's. All three with their mutual stories from missing time. I will tell you that in part two, there was a weird glitch that happened. We secured the line back on, but there was no shock, let's put it that way, from Chad or Alta that the line got disconnected suddenly. So, gremlins either got in the computer or not, but we soldiered on and preserved the rest of the second part of the interview. So, look forward to that. All right, thanks again for joining us for Strange Brow Radio. If you would like to be a guest on the show, get in touch with me at the Facebook page, the website, all under the name Strange Brow Radio. You can go to strangebrow.com, strangebrowradio@gmail.com. There's a Facebook page. Check out the weirdness at the Facebook page, Owl Moon Lab, like Hoot Owl, Moon Lab. Some major weirdness going on in Cottage Grove, Oregon. Also, we got some live events coming up. Go to strangebrow.com. Get in touch with me, strangebrowradio@gmail.com. Let me know what you're thinking, if you'd like to be a guest or if there's any topics you'd like to discuss. I'm in a new lair up here in the bowels of my studio. I'll talk to you more about that down the road. Thanks for tuning in, and as always, we'll see you in the trees.